Hey guys, I'm Calluna, and welcome to my big passion project, Makeup, a Sailor Moon Retrospective. Now, it's no surprise that I've been a huge fan of Sailor Moon ever since I started watching it in kindergarten. As I got older, I eventually bought the entire series in Japanese, and I got to see some episodes that I hadn't seen over here before. I found the manga in bookstores, which portrays a lot of things really differently. And as more and more things came out, the musicals, the movies, the live-action series, I just soaked it all up. Now, ever since I became a reviewer and producer, I've wanted to do something Sailor Moon related because it's just had such a huge impact on my life. I'm going to be breaking down all the different aspects of the Sailor Moon fandom, analyzing its plot, history, backgrounds, and just the impact that it's had on the fandom. Now, when I originally conceived this project, I had been planning to do the manga as its own video series. However, with the release of Sailor Moon Crystal, which might as well just be called Sailor Moon Sisterhood, a lot of stuff would be repeated if I had them both as their own separate video series. Therefore, for this series, I'm going to be focusing on the media versions, movies, television, live-action series, that kind of thing. Now, to start this series off, I'm going to give a very quick rundown of Sailor Moon's history, just to give a quick timeline of all the different media that I'm going to be going through. A lot has happened in Sailor Moon's 20-year history, and this is just to show how I'm going to be breaking it down video to video. And with that, let's get started. 1991. Manga artist Naoko Takeuchi wanted to create a series similar to the Super Sentai genre, but instead focusing on a group of 5 girls. Sentai is the term for the live-action superhero team shows from which Power Rangers came about. They would splice in the action scenes from the original Sentai series, but would film the rest of the non-action scenes with their own separate crew. The original concept was much more space-like in appearance, and the only one who really retained the original look is Sailor Venus, specifically her Sailor V outfit. She created a one-shot of Sailor V for Nakayoshi magazine, but it became popular enough to make it a longer series. Takeuchi also began working on the Sailor Moon manga at the same time. It ran concurrently with the Sailor V manga, which concluded along with the first season. So yeah, Clamp wasn't exactly the first one to do 2 series intertwining with one another. Overall, Sailor V's stories were much more lighthearted and episodic in nature. Both the Sailor V and Sailor Moon manga series were supposed to get an anime series. However, Toei Animation wanted to try and capitalize on the Sentai series as well, so they ended up dropping the Sailor V series in favor of Sailor Moon, which changes Minako from a protagonist to a supporting character, and focuses on the girls as a team, rather than Minako solo. 1992. The first season of the Sailor Moon anime began airing in Japan in March of 1992. After the first arc of the series proved to be very popular, both Toei Animation and Kodansha, the publishing company distributing the manga, asked Takeuchi to create more stories. This explains why the first series feels a lot more like a complete story in comparison to the rest of the anime and manga. It was supposed to conclude after Sailor Moon defeats Metalia. The anime series ran about 2 months behind the manga as it was being produced, which explains how a lot of the basic structure was similar, but there were some deviations from the story. The first arc of Series 2 was made entirely as filler in order to give Takeuchi time to make the story. You can definitely tell.
White Rose!
Oh, I come from a land, from a faraway place where the caravan camels roam.
Who are you?
Arabian Night!
Okay, we're trying to keep this episode short, buddy.
Oh, okay. Sorry, buddy.
1993. Sailor Moon musicals began running in Japan. These would blend story elements from various different seasons of the manga and anime, and included some of their own unique characters. There were nearly 30 different musicals. Often, the musicals were referred to as Seira Mu, which was a shortened version of the phrase Sailor Moon Musikaru. These musicals ran long after the series had ended, stopping around 2005. Once the anime series had concluded, that was when the musicals began to take on their own stories and creating new characters. They even fight vampires in one. No, seriously.
頼もしい選手たちだな。待ってるよ。ヴァンパイアの0秒で。
1995. This is the year that the Sailor Moon anime series first came over to the United States. This was a year after Mighty Morphin Power Rangers premiered, and due to its popularity, it allowed for Sailor Moon to be licensed to be promoted to girls. There were some issues at first when it came to the licensing. Several companies were bidding for Sailor Moon's license. An animation company called Toon Makers had been in talks with Toei. Toon Maker saw the success Mighty Morphin Power Rangers had by splicing together Sentai footage for the fights and filming their own non-actiony scenes later. They had the brilliant idea then to create their own hybrid series based on Sailor Moon, using animation for the fight scenes and live action for the rest. It was scrapped, and I honestly wouldn't have even known about it until it was shown at anime conventions as a joke. It's quite silly, lovingly nicknamed Saban Moon, due to its inspirations as well as Saban being the company it was pitched to for airing. It's kind of an amazing train wreck. Once DiC got the rights to Sailor Moon, it focused on marketing it to a younger audience. Since the series wasn't originally aimed for a younger audience, a lot of adult humor and jokes were discarded, several problematic episodes were cut or radically altered, and we got the pleasure of those Saved by the Bell looking cuts and after-episode lessons, Sailor Moon says.
Never run on a slick wet surface or with sharp objects in your hands.
2003. To celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the manga and anime, a live-action series of Sailor Moon was made, finally coming full circle considering the Sentai inspirations. Known as Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, it had 50 episodes and 2 movie specials, one that was a prequel and showcased Sailor V's introduction, and a sequel, tying up some last strings of the series. It blended elements from both the anime and manga, but the major thing that the series did that made it unique was focusing on a lot of the day-to-day lives of the girls. It feels a lot like watching a soap opera at times.
前世を繰り返したくない者にとって俺たちは不吉な存在だ。信じるか？
だって
俺は信じない。そう決めた。
2012. Kodansha decided to re-release the manga again in brand new volumes to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the manga, as well as tying into their other new celebration, the introduction of Sailor Moon Crystal, aka Sailor Moon Sisterhood. The new anime series follows the structure and design of the manga much more than the original. It was supposed to be released in 2013, but due to delays, wasn't released until July 2014. At the time of this video, there are currently 26 episodes of Sailor Moon Crystal out, and they cover the first 2 arcs of Sailor Moon.
Serenity.
2012 seems to have been quite a busy year, since that was also when a new set of musicals began airing. These were Takarazuka musicals, which meant all the parts were played by women, including male characters. 2014. At Anime Central in 2014, Viz Media announced that it acquired the license for Sailor Moon and that they planned to re-record all of the original anime, including the last season, Sailor Stars, which never made it over to the US. They began releasing each season in 2 parts starting in September. Viz made sure everything was uncut and left as it originally was. Everyone had their original Japanese names, the music was all the original score, and no alterations or cuts were made. Plus, it was including both the new dub and the original Japanese.
Well, that's none of your business! Stupid jerk in his purple pleated pants!
Lastly, there have been numerous video games for Sailor Moon as well, but there are quite a lot of them to go through. By 1998, 20 games had been released. More, of course, continued to be made. Eventually, I will be covering these in their own separate video, though it will depend on which ones I'm able to find. Again, this is just a very concise breakdown of what kinds of Sailor Moon media is out there. With each one, I will go more in depth about the history and characters, but I wanted to give just a quick timeline of how the series has progressed over the years. So yeah, I'll be covering basically everything in due time. I'm starting with the 1992 anime series since that was the first piece of Sailor Moon media that I was exposed to. Afterwards, I'll be covering Sailor Moon Crystal, mostly as a media version of the manga since that's pretty much what it exists to be. The live-action Sailor Moon series will also be discussed as well since that does a lot of really unique and different things to the Sailor Moon universe. I do want to cover the musicals as well, though this may take some time since it's the only Sailor Moon related thing that I don't have easy access to. It's difficult to find subbed copies of the musicals, and there are a lot of them to cover. The video games, kind of the same thing, though some of them I have much easier access to. Some things are subbed, some things aren't, some have emulators, some don't, and there's just a lot of games to try to slug through, so those might take a little bit of time as well. For now though, I'm going to be starting with the first anime, going from season to season, analyzing plot, characters, changes from manga to anime, and changes between sub and dub. Hope you guys join me in the next video where we're going to be looking at season 1 of the 1992 anime.
Geek Vision.